putting some oil on the board first, all right? I honestly feel you need to do that. You can either do it with a brush or you can do it just with a rag. But, if you're working with oil, I would recommend just wiping that canvas down with some oil. All right, and if you were coming back to an old canvas, then you would do that again after all the paint is dry. It's just to rub some oil on it so that you can kind of get started. Why do that? Well, I'll tell you what, I was given a demo, I don't know when, and it really, I kept realizing that I was able to draw with this brush without putting any paint on it. And that's because there was enough oil in the paint I put underneath the paint that I applied, that the paint itself had oil in it, and it was so easy to draw on top of. All right, now if it's too much oil, that's another case, all right? But the other thing that I did last week was to talk about using the yellow or yellow ochre. This is real important because the thing about this is that when you put that yellow down, it's going to mix with all the colors underneath that are light. All right, and I think that that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we understand. All right.
Well, question, because often we first put a coat of acrylic, and can you then put the oil? I guess you can't put the oil on the top of the acrylic so that you're not just dealing with a white canvas.
Well, you can, but you're not going to get that yellow to mix with your paint.
Okay.
All right. That doesn't mean that I'm putting on a lot of yellow. All right. I'm using some oil, and you can see that I'm what we call scumbling. I'm just rubbing it into the canvas. All right. So it's not like it's really thick.
And are you using the linseed oil or?
I am. I'm using some. Right now, I'm using the Gamlin product. I don't think it's it might be, I don't know where it is right now, but it's sort of like an oil, but sometimes they have these non-solvent products, and this probably had oil in it. So anyhow, I'm just kind of rubbing it on the surface. The reason I use the Gamlin product is because I couldn't find my walnut with it, so it's somewhere. But that's the age of my life. I'll tell you, I have to buy like 5 bottles of walnut oil so I can find one, and then I still can't find them. So it's like, so I don't know if that happens to anybody else, but that's with nature. All right. After I covered that, I talked about using some blue. All right, and I talked about larger brushes. I think that this is one of the things that I would recommend to anybody to understand that brushes can be they can be large and still have a tip on them. So if you really want to draw with it, you can draw with it relatively easily, all right, by using that, the tip, all right. And I usually start with a round brush, and for me, now I'm going to use that bluish Provence violet. Okay, for me, I look for elements. When I look at a scene like this, my eye starts going like this. All right, and because my eye starts going like this, I don't touch the canvas right away, but I can touch, mentally, all right, instead of physically. When I do that, I get a picture of what's going on here, all right, and I don't have to make things solid at this point, all right. I'm merely putting on touches where my eye is picking up information, all right. And those are like little dots. You can kind of connect the dots, all right. There is a certain point where you start to commit yourself to stronger elements, all right. But you want to get your placement and you want to get your size and things like that. But when you touch this, and it does help you to understand it, all right, it's easy to wind up seeing how you could get the proportions right. All right, and for me, that's important. Now, I'll look at the foreground. Because the foreground is really important to understand, because it's the thing that leads us into the space. So before I really commit myself to the background, I'm really trying to understand this space, all right? And I don't, if you notice something, you notice that I move in a certain speed. This is real important in designing and working with paint, all right? Because if you don't work at a certain speed, you look too long at certain areas of the painting, and then they never really work together. So you really try to get the rhythm going that you're experiencing, all right? And you try to understand the elements that you're working with, of course, and trying to get at this stage, you can change anything, all right, because you haven't really committed yourself to anything. So at that point, this is the initial stage of this painting. I'm gonna try to find the one that I did Sunday, so that you can see the what I did. I'm gonna take a photo of this. All right, but this is an art in itself right there. It's almost like music. All right, and it has a beat, a rhythm, and a fluidity. All right, now the next thing, we kind of always talk about how we block in our dark spaces. Well, one of the most important dark spaces is right here, because this is the foreground. As soon as I put that dark space in and make it bigger, everything falls back from that point. So I start to realize that, and then I tie my dark shapes together. So I really try to not necessarily, I know that everything that's going to be left light is going to be yellow, have yellow in it. Everything that's going to be dark is going to have purple in it. So that's the next thing that I'm doing here. All right. And I don't even have to put, it's really interesting, but I'm not putting any oil or mineral spirits on my brush, because I don't need to. All right, that oil that's underneath is making the brush strokes. All right, so I think that's the other part of having that oil underneath, which I think makes for an interesting way of applying paint. And at this stage, all right, we're really mostly going after the darks. So keep in mind where those darks are, squint a little bit so you can see where the pattern is, and just kind of block it in so that you get an understanding of where these are. I don't stay long. My eye picks up information. I try to keep my eye on the where I'm working. All right. In other words, what I'm looking at, instead of trying to make it using my memory, and trying to use what I'm seeing. All right. So at that point, we've got certain elements. We see that our eye gravitates to the dark here. There's a dark on that tree there. Our eye gravitates there. Our eye gravitates here. All right. We can really feel the dark of this. And then, we have play of light in this area here too. But all in all, this is what we're doing. So you do this until you've got a good understanding of what's going on here. All right, and what you think the dark and light patterns are. Okay, and by the way, the sky could be considered a dark. All right, so at this point, I've pretty well put this in. I could spend a little time being a little bit more accurate about the shape. Okay. But one of the things about a landscape, you don't have to be that specific, because those shapes are changing. All right. And because they're changing, you can make any shape you want. It's really funny, but that's the nature of the way this all works. So our foreground is darker. So you don't want to leave anything that's a light area. Okay. It's not a light. after that, I start to go after elements that I think are important. One of the easiest things to go after here that's really definitive is the sky. All right, and I look to see where my eye goes, and my eye goes right here. Now, it's funny, but I have all these different blues on my palette. The one that I'm putting down is essentially the Radiant Turquoise by Gamlin. All right, you know, turquoise is a warm color, so when you go put it on the yellow, it's going to have a certain sense of sunlight in it to begin with. All right, and as that yellow change, as that I always look to see how this changes, and here it starts to get a little darker and a little bit more violet. And so now I took some Verdure blue and mixed it into the Radiant Turquoise. All right, and then I see this going more and more toward the violet. All right, and you can see that your eye doesn't stay there very long. It seems to be duller. All right, so you kind of want to get that in. Okay, and then as it goes even further, it gets even more violet. So here's where the Verdure blue comes in, okay, as it plays. So we're going from warm to cool in that direction. And then from the standpoint of the complements, all right, there's certain complements that work against one another, and that turquoise has a certain complement, which is pink. All right, and so we can, you know, with what we're working with, we can add a touch of yellow to it, but we're going to go after the pinks, all right, and just kind of throw those in where we see the pattern of the pink light. Okay, and that is where we're focusing from the standpoint of value. So if I'm going to adjust that, I'm going to adjust that darker too. As we go over here, the pink gets redder. And so now we're just kind of throwing in the red. So we're making a comparison between the two. And this one right now, because it's on a yellow light, doesn't jump out at me as much as it should, perhaps. So I might make it a little bit lighter. But when I do that, I take the pink out of it, which I think creates the vibration. So I'm going to bring that pink back in. The other thing is that I see pinks other places. I see pinks in the tree here. I see, you know, a pink there, and I feel it's interesting. But as this goes down, it gets cooler. All right, which means that this almost looks like a violet right there. So you see that I'm not painting trees. I'm painting as with what's his name? Monet said, paint an oblong of pink, a stripe of yellow, triangle of green. The next thing is to go after the local color too, which is the green that's here. And you start to realize that your eye is gravitating to that area because of how light it is, and perhaps maybe how yellow it is. All right. So we want to keep that crisp and clean. So we're going to just block that in. We're not necessarily, if anything, everybody's got to understand, we're not, we're blocking in colors right now. All right. And we're trying to get their value right. So here we have a kind of a greenish light here. Okay. And that green is lighter than it appears there. All right. So we could lighten it a little bit, but this is one of these where we're going to just kind of throw that cool green in here. We feel the cool green. So we just block that in. And as we're blocking that in, we realize what the interaction between that green and the red that's here. All right. So with that, we start to feel that combination at that point. And I think the thing to understand is that what you want to try and do is understand the contrast of things, all right, and the order of things. For instance, there is a touch of darker blue back there, all right, or on here. And, you know, I'm not gonna, obsess with anything, I'm just gonna place it. And I think that this is the key, so if you feel any of these colors, or if you feel an outline, all right, you make an outline. And then the next thing is to kind of go after the elements that we have up above, which are a kind of greenish light here. All right, and we're now blocking that green light in. And you know, you're trying to go after that pattern of shape. You see how I'm touching. I'm still using this large round brush. The thing about the large round brush is that, you know, prior to the Impressionists, that's all artists had. They just had round brushes. So, you know, how long do I stay with a round brush? Well, usually I'll stay, when I'm laying down paint like this, all right, I'm staying long enough with the brush, you know, I can use it by pushing on it as well as using its tip. So I think that that's the way that works. And you want to really judge your values and your intensities and your color combinations. I tend to mix, by the way, I tend to mix only two colors together. All right, so as I was saying here, it was interesting. I took some emerald green and I took some cadmium green light, and I mixed them together to make this color. Now, if that color doesn't work like I wanted to, I might desaturate it a little bit with a complement. But the idea is to you know, just kind of try and get the color as close as possible. I was trying to explain that to somebody yesterday as well, when they were said they have problems with their painting. Well, if you can, oh, I know, she was a watercolorist. And the thing that she was having trouble with was, she was, let's see what I was gonna say, because I'm thinking here at the same time, but, oh, I said to her, make a window, as you're making your watercolor, make a window, and then paint your watercolor to the right side of that window on that paper, so you see that you're making the right color. So I think that I think the key is to get the right color and value. And how do you do that? Well, you can certainly take your brush and hold it up to what you're painting to see what the values are, all right? Or you can, you know, well, you should try to be as accurate with the value and color as you possibly can be. All right. And you see me now blocking things in, but I'm going to say something to you. The greens, I have to read the greens for how some greens come toward me and other greens recede. And there's going to be a challenge here because I want this to recede. I don't want it to be too intense. And yet at the same time, this is where the darkest green is, right here. Okay, we have greens up here, and of course, these are real dark violet greens. But this sequence of green is that this is darker than over here. Okay, and I think that that's one of the things that we want to recognize. So we want to compare. All right, and we want to see how we make our vibrations. Now, anytime you have any darks, all right, it's easier sometimes to throw the violet in first. Okay, because you can come back and change the temperature or the color of those darks as you're working. All right, but here you see me spending a little time trying to get the shapes. Okay, and as I'm blocking things in that, you know, I'm going to judge the value, the contrast, and I don't want to leave anything light that might be a dark. Okay, so keep this in mind. I think that the thing here is that we want to adjust this or try to get the value or the color to be as accurate as you can possibly be and get the value. So I think you see me blocking things in now. This is the thing that I want you to understand. And there's a certain point where, hey, you start to realize things are working. Okay, and you you know, keep in mind that you're thinking about what's pink, what's yellow, what's green. And you can see how I've kind of blocked things in here now. And truthfully, we have the different blues that I work with. All right, so we can start to throw, you know, the blue green in here with the purple. And just try to sense the way that's working, all right? And so now we're kind of playing with that combination, you see? And we're coming here to get the sizes and shapes right. And we do have these specks of blue that are coming through. So at that point, we want to look for those too. But I'm going to be going through all of this now and painting everything one time. All right, you notice that I'm not going back and obsessing too much with this. All right, I'm picking up information and so it's working, and I'm watching the painting as it's going along now. You know, if I have to add any lights to this, you know, I've got, or blues to this, you know, I've got blues that are coming up into here. I've got blues that are going up here. Okay, and once I start to fill all this in, things start to work. All right, and it's just by putting down pieces of color. All right, so I'm going to stop right now because I want you to see that I blocked it in. All right, and how I was blocking in. I think this is real important. This is the next stage. I started taking this one further because this was the demo that I did for the last class. All right, and I'm just playing with this one right now, but it'll give you an idea of where that is at this point. Well, where do I have problems with this particular one at this point is right in here, the bush. All right, I've got to get the right value and color, and I've got to get the play of the contrast. And sometimes you think that things are much darker or lighter than they really are, so you have to kind of play with that. The other thing is, you'll see me, there's a certain point where after I put down the paint, all right, I'll start to use my palette knife and start to work that as well for edges and things like that. All right, but you can see the vibration of the color. You can see the colored light, and you know, here now is where I'll start to play with my palette knife to get the feeling of some of these elements. All right, and not necessarily make them too strong, but all in all, you can see how I've built that in. So I'm going to put them next to one another, and then with the idea that you see the way things transpire little by little. All right. Now, one of the things that I did that with the one study, which I think is really interesting, is the sky and the transition of the sky here and the transition of the sky here. And one of the things that I started realizing is that I kept trying to paint the sky lighter, all right, when it really is getting cooler, all right, meaning that it's more violet over here than it is blue. Okay, and so with that violet, I'm which is interesting because I really found it in here. You know, I have to look at that color, and the violet actually is the same value as that blue, but it makes this vibrate so much more to have it against the violet. And because I'm the kind of person that works with pure color, I mentioned that I don't mix too many colors together. This is pure Verter blue right out of the tube. All right. So now you see how that violet all of a sudden perked that whole area up there. So I think, you know, the transition of mixing things like that, once you have your shape, now you can really adjust your value in color. And sometimes it's really interesting, but you think that making something lighter, oh, I know what I wanted to tell you. if I have to make a blue lighter, I might take a lighter blue instead of white. Okay, I want you to understand that. I think that the thing about mixing color is that I might, if I want to lighten an area like this, I might add a lighter blue to lighten that area. Okay, not white. And I think that this is one of the things that I think a lot of people who have problems in painting, they always go to white to lighten the color. So we're not talking about going to white, all right? So anybody have any questions?
I have a question, Walt. So I think these are great demos. And really looking forward to trying to start paintings this way, but like, how far do you take it now?
You know what, when I had this in an earlier stage, I really liked it. All right, and I kept saying to myself, yeah, I might try to submit this to that show that I'm in this weekend, because I was making it so quickly. And I still like it at this point, all right? The areas that I have some problems with are just distance, all right? How am I looking at things? And then some of the little elements of emphasis or edges, things like that I want to play with. But I don't know, Tim, you just get it to where you like it. All right, it doesn't have to be so strongly defined, especially if it's about color. All right, that's the thing that I think a lot of people need to recognize, because I think sometimes we have we have a piece that's about color, not about value or about the object. It's about the color. So I think that this is one of the things that's real important to recognize. Okay, and you can see, you can make a comparison between, as you're painting, you can make a comparison back and forth. But keep in mind that when you make a painting, you don't have to make it exactly like the picture. All right, the people who are looking at your painting, they don't have the picture to compare to. They have only that. And it's in the feeling of the color and the value and the vibrations that I think are going to attract somebody to it. Just like I said, are we attracted to red and green? Not very easily, but we are attracted to violet and yellow, and you can see the violet and yellow in this particular painting. All right, and I think I gave a demo. I'm not sure if it was from your class, but this was last week. And it's the same thing, it's that yellow and violet, all right? And all of a sudden you have sunlight. So keep in mind that it's all about color, okay? Any other questions?
They look great next to each other.
Yeah, it's fun to see that, it's fun to see them, and see how, and you see how I played with that, and it didn't take me that long, did it?
No,
I think this is it, if you understand this. But it would be making these comparisons, all right? But anytime I'm working like the blues, I'm going to compare the blues to each other based upon their value and intensity and warm and coolness, and the same thing with the greens. I'm going to try and get those like that. And if I'm having trouble mixing the color, I will actually mix the color and touch the object or hold the brush up to it, all right? To try and get the color to be as accurate as possible, but I'm pretty good at mixing color. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're good to go now. All right, so I wanted to cover that so that we know, and you can take a look at them on here and you get an idea of where they are.